welcome to our webinar. We are hosting and this is my colleague.
My name is Kateryna.
And you will never guess it, but my name is also Kateryna. So we are talking about GDPR and CCPA today.
And about using personal data in marketing. So
let's get started.
Yeah, let's get started. You can write down comments and tell us who you are, what do you do, what's your interests, and what do you want to get from this webinar.
So just for a brief interaction with you again, so there are some examples of what we would like to know about you. So it's my profile, okay, my name in it, and who I am, my job here also, and what do I do usually at my work. So I'm a GDPR lawyer and I'm a privacy lawyer here in Legal IT Group. And I mostly deal with GDPR compliance, and now I'm just taking a little bit research and other things related to CCPA also. So today we are talking about marketing, and especially some interesting areas of marketing, some of the predictions and artificial intelligence and so on, just of a great interest. And my colleague is...
Yeah. Hello, my name is Kateryna. I'm also... Again. I'm also IT lawyer in Legal IT Group, and I mostly advise on data privacy and algorithm ethics. Also, I deal with face recognition and data protection trends worldwide. So let's get it started with our agenda.
So, Kate, would you please read us, say us about a little about our agenda today?
Okay. So first of all, we'll talk about predictive analytics and predictive analytics under GDPR and CCPA. Then we will move forward and talk about artificial intelligence in marketing, especially about profiling and automated decision making. After that, we will discuss some cases, some interesting cases, and in the end of the webinar, we'll talk about, we'll give you some tips in frames of GDPR and CCPA.
So we neatly summarize everything we have been talking about during the seminar. So you'll have some maybe some insights, maybe some interesting things or questions you haven't thought about much lately, and we hope that it may help you somehow. So don't hesitate to share your experience with us and ask us some questions if you are interested in.
Yeah, we're waiting for your
we are
questions
proceeding to the general overview of the GDPR and CCPA. So I'm almost sure that you know what the GDPR already is, and we know that it's in force since 2018, and it's affected a lot the way the data is processed, especially the data sets that include privacy materials like personal data. And now we are discovering there are some Californian GDPR called CCPA. So what exactly CCPA is?
Actually, it's a law state of California, and it aims to protect California residents. It applies to only for-profit businesses that are doing business in California and collect and process personal data of California residents only. But California is a pretty huge state, and actually a lot of companies, even outside of California, do business in California. So CCPA actually applies to most companies in USA and even Europe.
So why it is so? It's not because it's like a GDPR and it's a universal framework to be applied in every EU country, but because California is one of the greatest and one of the biggest and one of the most rich states in the USA, and those most huge companies have its branches or operating under the law of the California. So it's hard to say that no Californian data would be processed in the process of its operation, in the process of some projects running and so on. So essentially, when we're talking about the CCPA, we are talking that, of course, some California residents' data will somehow will end in the data sets, processed everywhere. So we have to be ready to face the consequences if we are going to enter the market of the California as well, and not only California but the USA at all. So just to start, we have these little pictures telling us that there are some actually vast majority of cases and vast majority of information about the enforceability and about the practices under the GDPR, but just because it is valid, it is enforced now, but the CPA will start to be applied from the January next year. It's almost here, so we must prepare, and so this way we are aiming to help you. We are aiming at helping you to be ready, actually. So let's see a little video about the accident on the kitchen we had a few days ago.
Hello.
Hi, I was waiting for you.
Really? Why?
Really. And don't worry about the bear.
What bear?
Some more cookies?
So, this is our little kitchen accident. Sometimes it happens that the predictive analytics is used to predict actually something, like the behavior of our customers. And in this way, the predictive analytics aims to process some data collected in order to open and discover new information as well. It helps us to, for example, make great marketing insights to sell for our clients, or maybe predict something that we can recommend to buy. So in this way, we are talking that sometimes we know more about the customer than he knows about himself or herself. In this way, so the data sets are not, of course, processed manually. It would take a lot of time, just maybe thousands of years to process. So we are using usually the sophisticated methods to process them, like machine learning, like artificial intelligence, and so on and so on. So this is a real predictive analytics. Of course, as it is dealing with the data, especially with the privacy and with personal information or personal data, which is more used to talk about the GDPR. So GDPR, we are talking about personal data. When we are talking about the CCPA, we're talking about personal information. So this is a slight difference that can help us to understand that we are dealing with one of the frameworks, well, maybe about the European legislation or about the American. So in this way, we have most of the time we have two questions, like what will a specific customer do in the future, and this is it is a result of processing a vast majority of personal data, or what we have a segment of customers to do what they are to do usually in this region, in this type of the customers, or maybe at the time of the day, what they will do if they find themselves in the market, just like that. Thus, we have two kind of questions, like this: if we are not recording their names, so maybe their social numbers, is it okay that we are using it? It's anonymized. We don't know who is buying the cigarettes, or maybe we don't know who is buying the milk, and thus we can use the data to process everything. How do you think, Kate? Will we need to apply to the CCPA, maybe GDPR, to the data, like who's buying the milk at this time of the day, and maybe with a cash?
Yeah, it may work. Write down your comments. What do you think about this?
But actually, do you think it's able to be anonymized somehow? Just not as a technical. Let's not talk about the techniques, the software we would use, or maybe some hardware we would use, but about the principle. If it is anonymized, will we have to apply GDPR and CCPA to such data?
Actually, anonymized data is actually no data. So if you
no data or no personal data?
No personal data. So if you're not using personal data, you don't have actually to comply with CCPA or GDPR. No data, no problem.
Okay, but sometimes we can just process something, and in the case we will find a report, maybe some other, not a pleasant document in our post box, like saying that you have breached the law of the privacy, that we have received the complaint from the data subject or the customer if you are in the USA. So let's say anonymized or pseudonymized data. Okay, let's talk about anonymized data. But can it be suddenly become personal?
Actually, if you connect it with another data, personal data from even another controller or business, it can identify the person and thus become personal data.
Okay, that's a great insight actually, because of course if we are working with marketing, we have a lot of data, of course. We are collecting it maybe even each moment we are working. So in the end we have a vast giant data sets which we may combine somehow. Maybe some of the data will be deleted, but some data sets may be enriched or supplemented with other data sets, resulting in the identification of individual, of the precise individual. And those we will face the GDPR compliance, of course. So it leads us to the complicated processing, like in the song of the Avril Lavigne. Like we will find ourselves not in the comfortable position. We were just working with some data which is not, of course, so personal. We could tell about our friends and maybe take some to our homes if it is confidential, of course. Check your policies inside your work, of course, and consult your employer. But still, some data will not consider it personal, and thus we are less attentive to its secrecy or less attentive to its confidentiality. But when we are working with personal data, we have to be cautious. In this way, we can face some complicated moments, like we have to suddenly respond to our data subjects who are writing to us saying that you have my data, please delete it. Or maybe you have my data, but I didn't ask you to send me these emails. I wasn't surprised to it. Please remove me from the email list. And in this way, we cannot just ignore them and go away with it. Of course not. We may face some really unpleasant situations if we do so. So in this way, we have to have a policy to work with them. And it's just not a good marketing tip, but it's actually a good compliance tip, legal compliance precisely, because if the customer or data subject in the European Union, we cannot just ignore the compliance and ignore the complaint, of course. We have to respond to it promptly, and we have to say to them that, okay, you have the right to delete your data or object to some kinds of processing and maybe transmit our data from this data set to another controller. Okay, we are okay with it. We know that it's your right. It's guaranteed by law. Okay, so we're just doing it in this time. No worries. But of course, if you have some rather juicy data you would like to work with and you would like to maybe use in some research or so on, and actually this sensitive data, maybe about the gender or about the health and so on, something really personal, is extracted from you, is out of your control, you cannot be sure that your predictive models will soon work correctly and result in the insights you would like them to make. And sometimes maybe this will lead to the problems with your customer, of course, who is actually ordering with the marketing research to be precise to help him with his business. And in this way, the withdrawal of consent, for example, or the right to object to some processing will stop the predictive analytics models, and this will lead to the rather unexpected results. So in this way, we will have to maybe foresee something and work out a way to work with some data that is leaked, or maybe that is leaked from our control. I mean, this is out of our control actually. The other thing is retention. We cannot store data forever, and in this way.
So under GDPR, only as long as the purpose of collecting and processing data is not fulfilled, so policies of processing need accurate drafting. So on principle of minimization of purpose of processing data is applied. And you can't use this data forever. You have to set some specific period of time within which you will process this data. And in contrary, CCPA doesn't actually pay attention on this issue. So retention is actually not even mentioned in CCPA. Yeah.
So in this way you are saying essentially, as far as I understand, that if we have some purpose for which we collected the data, and then actually this purpose is no more actual, like we have done our research maybe, or we just ceased working with such a client, so we don't need this data to make him researches and predict the behavior of his customers, something like that. So we essentially have to delete this data.
Actually, yes. Are you surprised?
But what if I have like some, let's say, accounting responsibilities to fulfill, or maybe some taxing data, some data I have to report to my taxation authority? So what have I do? Well, it's rather complicated. It's requiring some knowledge about the legal process, let's say legal territory in a special country or maybe state. And in this way, it's not so easy to say that, okay, I know that we used your data and now you have every right to have your data deleted and not used anymore. But there is a case that we are also working the legal we are also bound by the law, and we have to maybe retain some your data in order to, let's say, to fulfill our taxation forms, or maybe to make a correct keep our accounting books. And in this way, we just, as far as I understand you, that we have to, let's say, retain some data, but keep it secure. Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
So in this way, even if face recognition data, let's say that it's of course the personal data. So I know that I'm asking you silly questions. You can't believe that I'm asking it, but of course I deeply care for those who are not. Sometimes we don't consider some pictures and maybe some pieces of text like personal data, but apparently if you can use this piece of information in order to identify someone, or you can reasonably find another piece of data and combine them, and those resulting in identifying a person. Of course, this is personal data. So Katya just stares at me with a question in her eyes, like, okay, we have covered it. Why bring it again? So we have actually a situation. Yeah. So we have essentially Postal Service.
Mm-hmm.
So we have been discussing it for a few hours ago, and I decided to include it in our webinar so we can ask you as well. So we have a case where Postal Service was collected. Of course, it was delivering parcels and letters and so on, but despite that, they also collected some profiles, and they made the profiles of their customers, saying their home address, maybe their hobbies, some their preferences, and of course maybe some presumptions about the political views and beliefs, and decided that why not, we can sell it to the political parties, or maybe some companies who may use it for their legal right to promote themselves. So how do you think it will be okay with the GDPR and CCPA just to sell the data you have collected while you are delivering the parcels?
Okay, let me think. I'm not sure that this...
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but okay. I'm waiting for your response as well. So please write down your thoughts in our chat, and we will respond to you promptly as quickly as we see it. So let's proceed.
Okay, I'm not sure they obtained explicit consent from their data subjects to sell this data, first of all, and moreover, it's a kind of sensitive data, and I'm again not sure that they sent this purpose of processing personal sensitive data in their politics, and didn't inform their data subject about this. So as far as I can see, they are breaking the law, and I think authorities should fine them.
How much how much money they would have to pay? How do you think? If you were a person who decides, you are working in an authority and you just see this case and you are like shocked how they can do it just, and you are so enraged that you consider, of course, all the elements of this violation because you're working in an authority, of course. And then you decide, let's find with this sum. What sum would you choose?
Let's say $18 billion.
Oh yeah, it's like a handful of money. So I'm not sure. So every company has some. So just I'm shocked. I'm just in shock. There's so much money just to not to comply with the actually little regulation. By the way, we have a question in our chat. Our listener asks, I have a question, he says. How to be in compliance with the GDPR and CCPA at the same time? Is it possible?
Actually, GDPR is much more stricter than CCPA, but still they are not like CCPA is not covered fully of GDPR scope actually. So as far as you comply with GDPR, we can say that you almost for sure comply with CCPA requirements, but you should pay attention on some specific issues that are regulated by CCPA. For example, specific right to opt out of selling your personal information that should be implied in your business activities.
Okay, great. So I think that we covered the predictive analytics, and I will gladly ask Katya to show us a video and maybe say a few words about the artificial intelligence. So we are asked if we have some more videos. Do we?
Yes, of course.
Great.
But first of all, let me say that we are moving forward to our next question of our webinar. It's artificial intelligence in marketing, and we'll talk about profiling and automated decision making. So actually artificial intelligence is now used in almost every industry, including marketing, and almost every marketing strategy relies on data. For example, advertising companies use some information about your behavior to show you target messages. And first of all, what is artificial intelligence in marketing? It's a method that is used to help to predict customers' next steps and to improve customer journey by leveraging customer data and some artificial intelligence concepts, for example, machine learning, big data. Let's now look at one funny video. Is artificial intelligence a magus?
Oh, artificial intelligence. What should we offer to John?
Well, he just came home and his medical sensors tell me that he wants some pizza.
Great! Send him push notification now.
So we just see.
So our actors are the best, I guess. They should get Oscar.
Or maybe go to Hogwarts.
So which ways the artificial intelligence influence marketing? It helps to understand your customer better, to optimize digital advertising campaigns, and to improve customer journey. But there is a question rise. When the huge amount of data that is analyzed by artificial intelligence, for sure is huge. There is a huge amount of personal data as well. So how the usage of personal data at artificial intelligence marketing is regulated under CCPA and GDPR. Let's pay attention on the most usable artificial intelligence instruments in marketing in the context of personal data processing, profiling, and automated decision making. So let's start with profiling. Is automated processing of personal data that helps to evaluate some things about your consumers, and it also is sometimes is a part of automatic decision making, but not always. So it's a key tool that companies use to sell their product or service. For example, customer behavior is used for target messages. For example, also some online shops may use profiling to categorize their consumers according to their needs. But profiling is still a processing activity. It's still processing of personal data. So can you move?
Of course.
Okay, so that means that
I know.
the transparency obligations under both laws, both actually regulation law, should apply. So the next slide.
Okay.
Okay. So let's figure out what requirements does GDPR and CCPA set to controllers or business. So first of all, it's general actually rule to inform data subject that their data will be used for profiling purposes. It's actually a general rule to notify your data subject about purposes of processing data. Also, companies using profiling should inform data subjects about consequences of using this method of profiling. Moreover, in general, companies should also get the consent from their data subject to use their personal data for profiling purposes. And also, data subject has the right to object to or withdraw the consent for processing their personal data for profiling purposes, and this right shouldn't
Be
restricted, and it can be used anytime.
So just for a quick reminder, don't forget to write in our chat. We want to see it. We want to hear your meaning, or maybe some your thoughts about the profiling. Why is it so dangerous? Why we have to be so protected from it? Why just we can't allow some companies, maybe some governments, or let's say everyone to process our data and make from them a profile out of them? Why so much fuss about? What is wrong with the profiles? So I would like to hear your thoughts. Please don't forget about our chat and participate in interaction with us. We'll be gladly answering your questions. So I'm sorry for interrupting you. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So CCPA actually mentioned that all the personal data can be used for profiling, but it does not specifically cover any profiling restrictions. So only general rules for processing data can be applied in this case. For example, within the right to be informed, businesses must provide their consumers with information of how their data is collected and for which purposes this data is collected. So in their notices, they should explicitly disclose that they use this information for profiling. And moreover, consumers that do not want to their data to be profiled can only request to delete their data at all. So,
but must it be always just a consent?
No, actually, if you're talking about CCPA, actually no consent is needed to process data and profiling.
But what about the GDPR? Maybe maybe make profiling just just when we are obtaining consent? Is it must, well, of course, always a consent, but not any
No,
other
it's
legal
like
basis?
it was general rule, but we also can process data on the basis of other legal
basis.
basis. Yes, for example, legitimate interest, or in order to comply with contract we concluded with this data subject.
It's actually curious because some of our clients decide that just making a business it's sufficed. It does suffice for, let's say, saying that it's my legitimate interest and it overrides the rights and of that subjects. But it's of course not always the case. We would like to say that consent is more suitable in most of the situations when we are just using automated decision making and profiling. Of course, if you are signing insurance contracts and where you sign, let's say, some agreement with your doctor, or GP level the person that you are always going to obtain some certain medication, or to make an overview of your health, or just to consult with. And in this case, of course, if there are some tools that use automated decision making, like obtaining a loan, in this case some rates may depend on the profiling and decision making. So of course we have the right to be protected from the automated decision making. Of course, there is always a case for just one instrument to cut, not the cut, but just to comply with the GDPR, is to say that the withdrawal of this consent is helping us to protect people. In this way, we are talking mostly about consent. Of course, it's not always the case, but I'm interrupting you again. So I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Shall I proceed to the next slide?
Yeah. So first of all, we'll see a little funny video again, and one of the actors is Christmas tree.
And one more camera over here on our Christmas tree. That's it.
So, why did we do it?
So we can film our drunk employees and know what to expect from them next year.
Oh, we will analyze their behavior and
Yes.
it will affect their salaries.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start with definition and meaning of automated decision making under the GDPR. So it means that decisions are based solely on the automated processing of personal data. I mean that no human involvement is in place. And also the decisions produce legal effects concerning the data subject or significantly affect him or her. For example, they affect person's legal status or their legal rights, or has equivalent impact on their behavior, choice, and so on. For example of automatic decision making is, for example, refusing of an online credit application. It is made only by automatic means with no human involvement and based only on the information provided. Actually, GDPR restricts solely automated decision making, including profiling, with legal or similarly significant effects. So let's move forward to another slide. And actually, GDPR set some requirements to be met by companies that use automated decision making. First of all, you should notify your data subject of the processing data using automated decision making. This should contain information about the existence of automated decision making, first of all. Also, information about the logic that was involved in automatic decision making, and also the significance of this automation decision making, and also the consequences of it for data subjects. Moreover, this using of automated decision making puts some requirements concerning explicit consent of the individual that shall be obtained by controller. We're talking about consent again, but it's like the most general way to use automatic decision making, unless other legal basis in accordance with Article 22 applies. For example, if automatic decision making is allowed by a member state and applies to controller. Also, the controllers are to offer simple methods of demanded human intervention in automatic decision making, and to offer to express point of view of data subject and challenging this decision based on automatic decision making.
But do we always have a human intervention? Can we just automate all our process, so we can just click a button and forget about some processing activities for a while? Like I would like not to sit and always wait for some man or some woman or some child who would ask to, like, okay, I'm here, so listen to me. If there is a decision made on my targeting ads, I don't want to see such ads. Please do something with that. Okay, why not? Why can't I optimize it? So just always serve the ads that I want and sit with it.
Actually, solely automated decision making is really helpful for businesses and can help to automate all the processes without human involvement. But still, the GDPR required that there should be some ways to check it out, to check the decision made by automated means, and this means that human intervention shall be offered to that data subject.
Actually, it's a great point, because as I said earlier, that we have such a right to not to be subject to decision making, automated, I mean. So in this case, human intervention would really help. Like if you have some pre-made decision about you, but there's always a man or a woman who can overview it and consider again. Maybe some important factors have been forgotten or something like that. So actually, it's a great point. Thanks for mentioning it here.
Okay. And the last one, but not least, is check the algorithm and data being processed regularly. It should be made in order to ensure that the decision making is not leading, for example, for discriminatory processing, because some kind of data, like sensitive data, can be processed as well, and it can lead to discrimination of data subject. CCPA actually does not have special provisions on automated decision making, so again, we can just talk about general rules of processing activities. As with profiling, consumers have the right to be informed, and to be informed about actually purposes of processing their personal information, namely automated decision making. Also, if consumer doesn't want his data to be used for automated decision making, he or she can just opt out of sale data or request the deletion of this data at all.
So in CCPA we have an opt-out rule, but what about GDPR?
GDPR sets the rule to object or the rule to withdraw. The right to object can be applied when processing is based on basic legal basis, not that differs from consent. So you can object of processing your data, and this request shall be
actually realized, I guess.
Yeah, realized, and
so
your data shall be not processing for such purposes.
Let's say incompatible.
Yeah.
So, great. Shall we proceed? And we are having this question again, as you can see.
Okay, yeah. So as you can see, we have this case on your screens. You can also write down your opinions about this. So the point is that video cameras on a giant shopping mall were installed in order to protect the property. But the cameras covered the part of road that was a state road, public road, and these cameras were able to detect the infringement of parking and traffic rules and then send the pre-fulfilled forms to police. Moreover, the cameras have also been tough to detect shoplifters, and after that it go and search in the social media to identify the offender and also send their reports to the police. So here we can see automated decision making in process. And yeah, what do you think? Is this does this case show the violation of personal data rights?
I would ask the same actually our listeners, so don't hesitate to write about it in the comment section or in the chat. We are waiting for it, but while we are waiting, we can discuss it. So what do we have here? We have here actually a public area. We have here like maybe some purpose to protect the property of the shop, I guess. And we have also the pre-fulfilled forms sent right to the police. So yes, you have mentioned that there is a decision, there's this automatic decision making. Like we decided to report the infringement again right now. Maybe writing some license plate numbers or something like that. So well, how do you think? Is it compatible with GDPR and CCPA principles?
I think actually this violates both acts because. First of all, the part of state road were covered by these cameras, and moreover, nobody. I'm sure that nobody gave their consent to that controllers to proceed their information means not car numbers, for example. So I think
also there is this moment I'm also confused about, because there are some identification built actually embedded in the process of software running the cameras. So okay, if the camera decides that I just shoplifted something, of course I have not, but okay, I made such a move that maybe triggered some function or something like that, and in the end. The cameras decide that I'm a shoplifter, so they should search me in my Facebook, for example, and find me and write my name to the report to the police. Is it okay? Is it compatible with the purpose for which the cameras have been actually placed on the walls, maybe on the ceilings? I guess is that the only protect property purpose will not suffice. How do you think?
Yeah, I think completely not.
So we are waiting for your responses as well. It's important for us to know to learn your thoughts. Maybe you will find some other infringements or some other breaches of the law, and we will proceed to another case, actually happening in California. So, Katya?
Okay, so we have a company that is resident of California, and it decides to change its core business activities from marketing research and data analytics on demand to development of machine learning models to be applied by the clients.
So I understand that previously the company A has been processing the data in order to have the result, and this result to sell.
Yeah.
But now, since they decided that it have cost too much effort, and maybe they want to expand new business, new markets, so they decided make tools for this processing it otherwise. So they're not working with with raw data, but they make some algorithms to work with the raw data. But those imposing the obligation to collect data legally on the, let's say, on their clients. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, the company, should I continue?
Of course, of course.
Okay, so the company decided to sell some of the already collected data sets of personal data of the consumers of the biggest car retailers in the state, and the insurance company, let's call it B, decided to buy it for its internal researching. So
what do we have here? We have here actually an
amendment.
additional purpose, I guess.
Yeah, I think amendment purposes of processing.
Why so? It's just another company. It's not like you're selling it to the government. Why so many fuss about?
Because firstly it was collected and processed for one purposes by car retailer, and
let's say to know the patterns, maybe that some trades were more eager to buy some more speedy cars, maybe some more family-oriented cars, but now we have an insurance company. Why so? How can it affect this purpose?
It can affect it in this way. In this situation, consumers will have the right to opt out of selling this data because the purposes were amended. It's one of the bases to opt out, to request to opt out under the CCPA.
Okay, but what about GDPR? We will have GDPR here at all.
Actually, if everything takes place in
Let's not talk
California.
about this 100% thing, but about the probabilities. Is there a probability that we don't have to comply with the GDPR in this situation?
Well,
I think no. How do you think?
I think the same.
And how do you think? Please write it, of course, in our chat. We are waiting for your responses. And this leads us to the conclusion. Actually, we would like to summarize everything, maybe show you another video. Do we have some? Of course we have. So let's see a video about.
Hello, I want to buy this book,
Okay, I will call you Jimmy.
but my name is Boris.
I pseudonymized you.
But I want to be Boris. Stop it.
Great. Now you'll be the one who cannot be named. Anonymization.
Okay, just sell me this book.
So, you saw a video. Now we'll talk about the most useful tips for marketing teams in frames of our webinar, actually about GDPR and CCPA, in frames of these acts. First of all,
We have mentioned just a Boris who doesn't want to be Boris. So, of course, there's talking about pseudonymization, anonymization. And in this way, we can say, as we mentioned earlier, the anonymization is that no personal data are consequentially processed. So this leads us to the first conclusion.
use not personal data where is possible.
What does it mean?
It means that if you actually don't need personal data to be used, don't use it. Use only anonymized data, pseudonymized data, or then identified data under the CPA where it's possible. So in order to actually in order that CCPA and GDPR requirements were not applied for you. So
in this case, if you can use like data of the region or pattern of the region of a wide range of consumers, and not singling out just one person to predict his or her own behavior, use it. It's more safe for you, and it's of course lead to maybe less compliance burden. Why not? It could save you money, a lot of money actually. Another way is to say that you have to, of course, to decide whether you can use the personalized data, you have to review everything you have on your personal data processing, like the ways you collect data, the ways you store it, and the ways, of course, some people have access to it. Maybe you may not. So, of course, in the start of the process of complying, you may not be 100% sure that you know everything about your data processing inside your company. You may not know who have the access to this data, who use it maybe regularly for its own purposes, or where it's stored actually in the cloud, or maybe on some servers inside the company property maybe, or maybe on the diskettes. Of course, there's always a probability. So in this way, you should check everything and make a full audit, maybe internal audit, of course, to detect just the ways you collect, store, and use the data you have. So this leads us to
the next one. Much data means much responsibility, sometimes even too much. What does this mean? Actually, one of the principles of GDPR is to minimize the data is collected. So if you don't really need this data, just don't collect it and don't process it. Believe me, you don't need the information about shoe size of your consumers when you sell ice cream. So if you don't need it, don't collect it. Simple.
But I can see some interesting ways to use this data actually. So okay, of course, check if you are buying some data sets, or maybe selling some data sets, or collecting new, or maybe reorganizing old ones. Please check that the purchase database and your dataset are properly anonymized before you get it. In this way, if you are not using, you decide that general information about the patterns in the region or the country are enough for you to work on, and you do not have to make all the anonymization yourself. In this case, you are facing the higher risk of compliance. But in this case, if you are receiving the pure anonymized data, you may lessen your burden of legal compliance. In this way, it may save you time, cost, effort, nerves, of course, and maybe some liability and some just sleep at night. Why not? And of course, that we have also one short video about the consumer. So we would like to share it with you about the cameras on the next.
Hello.
Hi.
I want to put this GPS tracker on you, so our company will know what do you do 24/7.
What? Why do you do it?
We will provide you with the best ads, and it will improve your shopping forever.
No!
Okay, great. The camera on the neck is, I guess, it's a dream of every marketing department in every company. So, but still,
Yeah, just dreams. So
I hope so.
yeah, I'm not sure actually. So the next tip is to make sure that in connection with your own data sets, the new pieces of data do not identify a data subject. What does it mean? As we talked earlier, you should use non-personalized data wherever is possible. Actually, this leads to this rule. It means that when you have data, for example, pseudonymized or anonymized, but you connect this data, some pieces of the data with data of another controllers of this subject, it can lead to actually identification of this person and make this data personal information. So in order to comply with requirements of both laws, just ensure that this won't happen.
Still, what about the video? Why we have showed you it? Because you may have data sets about how the usual person in this time of the night of this maybe of this completion of this another shopping visits data we have in hand. That we have the roads which he or she usually takes from, of course, they first buy milk and then maybe some of course chocolate, and then ending in the bakery, and we have also the new data, like maybe some footage from the CCTV cameras, CCTV systems, and we can combine them, and actually we discover that our previously anonymized data set has become actually personal data, and maybe even sensitive personal data. So in this case, please check that the information you obtain from, of course, other service providers. For example, you might have a service provider hosting the CCTV cameras in your shop or maybe in another property, and when combined with data you collect yourself, it's not producing in previously anonymized data, which is not subject to compliance, suddenly become personal data and maybe of sensitive nature. So in this case, please be careful, be more careful with the data you collect from different sources. And of course, as the next is purposes. If you have one purpose, as we have showed before, be careful with expanding it. Even if the business have changed and you want to refocus on something else from previous activity, please be careful to know that the new purpose is compatible with the previous one, or be careful to obtain all the required legal basis to reuse the data you have already collected. Of course, it's a silly idea that you have to delete everything and collect one more time, but the law makes us respect, of course, the rights of the individuals, especially if you are changing the business so much that from just a little feature to make your life more comfortable, you become spying machine. It's like a harsh idea to live with. So it also leads us to another important principle of both the CCPA and GDPR, meaning the accountability. So records.
Yeah. So the rule is to keep them all and keep them safe. What does it mean? Why actually should you make records? It's in order to show your compliance with requirements of GDPR CCPA, and in order to save your data sets, data of your consumers or data subjects. So safeguards shall be put on place, and you'd better not use like admin login for and make it more complicated,
sophisticated, let's say. Maybe not that comfortable to tap every day, maybe every hour, but of course the security shall go first, and then you're comfortable. It's like idea of the GDPR and the CCPA, of course. And what about the machine learning and artificial intelligence?
Okay, the next tip is to remember that some new knowledge that is obtained via machine learning or artificial intelligence may essentially be personal data and thus fall into regulation under the GDPR and CCPA. What does that mean? It means that even if you think that some data that is collected via artificial intelligence are not personal information, it may be, for example, some metadata in files, it may become personal data.
Let's say that maybe some previously anonymized data when used on different software, maybe with different hardware, may unexpectedly shows that there are some metadata you have forgotten to actually retrieve. And in this case, you may find yourself in a position where you just have to comply with the GDPR because you just already obtained a vast amount of the actually personal data, because metadata can also be used as an identifier of a personal, like his computer, maybe, and then his browser or something like that. And it also leads to the person using this browser or the PC. So in this case, of course, it's important to keep up with technology progress and foresee the consequences. And in the end, we would like to say that if you are just exploring the market and you decide just to start maybe a little startup and collect some data to use maybe for say in a month, maybe in 2 months, when your MVP will be ready, and you're ready to release a beta to attract new customers. Please be careful with making some let's say purposes, to draft the purposes in this way that there's no place to not clear understanding of what you are collecting and for what purpose. The purposes must be clear. Data subject or a customer have to know what the data collected is for and how it is going to be used. So in this way, no time to be actually too greedy. We have to be explicit, like saying that we will use this data in order to make this. And so in this case, if you are collecting for the old purposes, you may see in your head, but you are not ready to collect them all the features in your final product. Just collect the data you are really have to collect. That is actually vital, important for you. So in this case, we have just some seconds to say our thanks. Please write your final questions and write your feedback about us and what would you like to hear in another webinar in our comments section or in chat. And we would like to thank you for your patience and for your attention. My name is Kateryna, it's my colleague.
Kateryna.
It's easy to remember, you can see. So please write us to our email if you have any other inquiries. Thank you all for watching, and I hope we will see you soon again. See ya!
Bye.